Hey guys, tonight we journey into a realm where rain falls like endless whispers through ancient canopies, where stone paths wind through tangled jungles, and where the largest hotel guests in history once stomped through the lobby wearing nothing but their skin and a few ceremonial tassels. Yes, you're about to bed down with the story of how ancient Sri Lankans didn't just love elephants, they practically invented luxury accommodations for them. Imagine checking into a place where the guest of honour is 12 feet tall, weighs 5 tons and gets his own spa tub. Oh, and he might step on you if you're not careful. You probably won't survive this, but hey, worth it for the story, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know who's out there drifting off across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squelch forward through the forest, the ground warm and slick beneath your feet. It's night, and the canopy above you is woven so thickly with branches that the moon is just a rumour. Humidity clings to you like cling wrap, and somewhere to your left a cicada hiccups loudly, then explodes into a full percussion solo. You're walking along a trail that's been here longer than most countries, literally. Beneath the fallen leaves and moss, this was once part of the great elephant highways of ancient Sri Lanka. These aren't roads for you, by the way. You're just tagging along. The real travellers on this network of paths stood higher than your roof and had toenails the size of your face. Elephants once marched here in glorious, slow procession, their footprints pressed deep into the soil, their ears flapping like soggy sails. Historians still argue whether these routes were planned by humans or simply followed the natural wanderings of elephant herds. But over time, one thing's clear. The people of ancient Lanka began adapting to these animal commutes, not the other way around. Unlike the rest of the ancient world where elephants were captured, broken and used like oversized tractors, Sri Lanka had a different vibe. These were not tools, these were honoured guests. Important guests. Guests with personal tastes in hay, mood swings, and opinions on bath temperature. And so begins the story of a truly boring, but gently majestic logistical miracle. Building infrastructure for elephants. You push past a curtain of vines and nearly stumble into the remains of an old stone platform. Thick, moss-covered, and just low enough for a trunk to rest on while the elephant above slurped some water. This wasn't a place for humans to sit. This was a trunk bench. Imagine a roadside diner, but for a pachyderm. The deeper you go into this forest, the more remnants you find. Not grand temples or war-torn ruins. Instead, odd dips in the earth shaped just like an elephant's foot. Rubble in straight lines that once formed retaining walls wide enough for a 5-ton beast to sleep inside. Shallow ponds now filled with lily pads once lined with steps and meant for bathing. Not you, unless you're fond of full-body leech massages, but for the real guests of honour. Here's the thing. Sri Lanka's ancient capitals, like Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa, weren't just seats of government. They were logistical hubs for elephant culture. At one point, Sri Lanka may have had more tame elephants per square mile than any other place on Earth. We're talking thousands. You'd need a spreadsheet just to keep track of their bath schedules. Why elephants? Well, because they were stunning, terrifying, and symbolic all at once. They represented power, wisdom, and sacred connection. Also, if you were a king trying to show off, a massive elephant with gold tassels and a rhythmic swagger was basically the ancient version of a private jet. Rolex and PR campaign rolled into one. You step over a crumbling foundation wall, one that smells faintly of damp stone and forgotten turmeric. Once this may have been part of a royal elephant rest house. The Sanskrit term hathikuchji, yes, try saying that with a mouthful of banana, referred to places specially built to house elephants on the move. We're not talking barns. These were well-planned, even beautiful structures. Elephant hotels, if you will. There's evidence of carved stone ramps so gentle they'd make an ADA compliance officer weep. Wide courtyards for socialising, massive feeding troughs carved out of single boulders. Some even had tiled flooring so the elephants wouldn't slip in the rainy season, and all of it was arranged not for human comfort, but to suit the needs of these immense, emotionally complex animals. One inscription near Mihintal, etched into a stone slab sometime around the 3rd century BCE, mentions provisions for travelling elephants, including food, shelter and water stations. So while the king's entourage may have been happy to rough it, his elephant got priority lodging. And here's the sleepy kicker. Many of these rest houses were spaced at a day's march for an elephant, not a human, not a horse. Specifically, they were timed for how far a healthy adult elephant could travel before needing a snack and a nap. You, meanwhile, are on foot, wheezing, drenched, and quite possibly developing blisters in places you didn't know had skin. But the elephants, well, they had it good. You lean against a tree, just barely catching your breath, and glance at the trail continuing into the night. Somewhere ahead is another ancient stopover, maybe a tank, a man-made lake engineered to collect monsoon rain for dry season use. These weren't built for thirsty peasants. They were massive projects designed in part to keep elephant bodies cool and mud accessible year-round. When you're 5 tons of flesh, mud isn't a luxury, it's armour. The people who lived here, monks, farmers, engineers and royalty, didn't see elephants as a nuisance. They didn't just tolerate them, they integrated their presence into everything from city planning to religious rituals. Temples had elephant paths, monasteries had feeding stations, forest shrines had stone inscriptions listing donations, not of gold or silk, but of fodder and water rights for elephants. You trudge forward, swatting at the occasional moth, and consider how strange this all feels. A civilization that engineered for animals, that designed public infrastructure not around pedestrian traffic or market carts, but around where their sacred, spoiled elephant companions wanted to walk, nap, or splash. It's a bit like building a 5-star hotel around your cat's favourite sunbeam, except the cat weighs 10,000 pounds and occasionally tramples things. You're still walking, by the way. Slowly. Plodding like the elephants you're pretending to understand. The path now runs parallel to a thicket of flowering trees, frangipani and ironwood, and beneath your aching feet, the forest floor is padded with soft decay. A leaf carpet centuries deep. Insects hum like tiny engines, and somewhere ahead, the outline of something massive looms through the haze. Don't worry, it's not an elephant charging at you. It's a carved stone relief, weather-worn and moss-shouldered, depicting a king seated under a parasol, one hand raised, while an elephant kneels before him like a courtier. This is your first real glimpse into the obsession. Not a casual admiration, not even awe. Obsession. Ancient Sri Lankan kings didn't just like elephants. They devoted policies, festivals, engineering, and even their legacy to them. To rule well was to manage elephants well. You had to feed them, train them, parade them, and above all be seen with them. Take King Dutugemunu, for example, a 2nd century BCE monarch who basically rebranded his entire royal image around one famous elephant, Kandula. And not just any elephant. This one reportedly broke through enemy fortifications during war, shared coconut water with the king, and was mourned like a fallen prince when he died. Modern historians suspect some of this might be royal propaganda, but still, elephant as war hero, therapist and bestie, that's a PR goldmine. Historians still argue whether the stories around Kandula are mostly symbolic or rooted in actual battle tactics. But what's certain is that kings often treated their war elephants not as mounts or vehicles, but as companions, and in some cases, divine allies. You know how some people name their cars and talk to them like friends? Now scale that up to a living tank with emotional sensitivity and a surprisingly low tolerance for insults. Back then, having elephants wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was political prestige. When foreign emissaries visited Sri Lanka, they were greeted not just by dancers or trays of mangoes, but often by trained elephants in full regalia. These animals bowed, saluted, or performed symbolic gestures choreographed to perfection. It was like a diplomatic tick-tock, but way slower and more respectful. And the number of elephants you had, that was your power score. A king with 30 elephants was rich. A king with 300 was legendary. One Chinese traveller in the 5th century CE, Fa Haiyan, wrote that the Sinhalese kings kept entire forests fenced off for royal elephants. Imagine that. Reserving whole biomes like VIP airport lounges for your preferred transportation mode. Now here's the part where it gets just a little absurd. These kings didn't just house elephants, they pampered them. You come across faded documentation, stone inscriptions, palm leaf manuscripts that list royal elephant budgets. Not army budgets, elephant budgets. Line items included food, caretakers, perfumed oils for massage, and even music performances. Because yes, apparently elephants responded to flute concerts. Your Spotify subscription seems a little less fancy now, doesn't it? And the royal court had ranks for elephants too. Some were noble, some were common, some were assigned to religious processions, others were for war. The really elite ones. They got personal names, titles and jewellery. That's right. Tusk rings, forehead pendants, and decorative armour plates. Not because it helped in battle, but because nothing says imperial dignity like a giant beast glinting with gold, plodding silently through a line of trembling courtiers. Of course, all this adoration wasn't purely for show. There was strategy involved. Elephants were expensive to raise and train. They required an ecosystem of handlers, herbalists, blacksmiths, and spiritual guides. So when kings lavished them with attention, they were also investing in a mobile, intelligent force that could influence warfare, labour, and religion. Think of it as a Swiss army knife wrapped in grey wrinkled charisma. You pause beside another relief, this one half swallowed by tree roots. It shows a line of elephants carrying ceremonial relics, their trunks curled upward, each with an umbrella holder trailing behind. One trunk even holds what looks suspiciously like a bell, as if to announce its royal presence. Fringe theory? Sure, but some scholars claim elephants were taught to ring bells at sacred intervals during processions. Can you picture that? A 5-ton percussionist with timing. And then there were the elephant parades, extravaganzas of light, dance and religious awe. The Perahera tradition, especially in Kandy centuries later, was rooted in older practices where elephants carried sacred relics across city routes, lit with lanterns and lined with barefoot devotees. While much of the formal pageantry developed in the later medieval era, the roots were here, in early Sinhalese royal devotion. At the height of these displays, elephants weren't just transportation, they were the altar. The relic didn't sit inside a cart or a shrine, it sat atop a living being. That alone tells you what kind of emotional and cultural gravity elephants carried. You duck under a low branch and notice deep impressions in the earth ahead. Stone sockets arranged in a long, neat row. These once held wooden posts that likely outlined elephant stalls or guiding fences. The spacing between them suggests stalls big enough for creatures who needed turning space, lounging space, and perhaps, judging by some remaining stone fixtures feeding troughs mounted at trunk height, this wasn't haphazard accommodation. These were planned units, much like hotel suites, a place for each elephant tailored to its mood, rank, and function. Some had carved drain lines beneath, so cleaning was easier. Others had ventilation slats or decorative friezes to keep the environment calm. Yes, ancient Sri Lankans possibly decorated for elephant vibes. You're not the only one who cares about mood lighting. You wonder how much say the elephants had in their own comfort. Hard to tell, but there's plenty of law suggesting they did show preference. Certain elephants reportedly refused to drink from dirty tanks. Others had known feuds with each other and had to be stabled separately, lest tusks fly and egos bruise. And don't forget the gifts. Visitors, local lords and priests often gifted elephants to kings, not just as a sign of loyalty, but to curry favour. Gifting an elephant wasn't just generous, It was the ancient diplomatic equivalent of giving someone a Lamborghini that also knows how to paint with its trunk and forgive your sins. You lean back, breathing slowly, the forest exhaling around you. Cicadas hush. A breeze picks up. Somewhere nearby, an owl lets out a sound like a broken kettle. And you think about how weirdly consistent this obsession was, across centuries, dynasties, invasions, and famines. Sri Lankan kings held onto their elephants like sacred artifacts, always finding ways to honour, house, and feature them in the tapestry of power. That might be why you're here, really. Following old elephant trails isn't about wildlife watching, it's about tracing an empire's nervous system. Because where the elephants went, everything else followed. Roads, water, people, temples. To study ancient Sri Lanka is to walk alongside elephants in the dark, wondering how they managed to leave such quiet, massive footprints behind. You're still deep in the forest, but the path is changing. The soil turns gritty, flecked with quartz chips that glint faintly when you shuffle your feet. A low wall appears beside you, barely a foot high, more suggestion than barrier. But stretch your imagination, and you'll see it as it once was. A kilometre-long enclosure wall around an ancient elephant tank. Not a gas tank, not a water tower. This tank was a huge artificial reservoir, built with stones, clay, and sheer audacity. Sri Lanka's ancient engineers were mad geniuses when it came to water, and when you're trying to keep thousands of elephants clean, hydrated, and happily mud-coated, water becomes more than a convenience. It's survival. And that's what this section of the journey is about. Not flashy war elephants or gold-tasseled parades, but the boring, back-breaking genius of hydrological elephant hospitality. Let's get the first thing straight. These tanks were not just puddles with ambition, they were feats of mind-bending coordination. We're talking about reservoirs that could span hundreds of acres, lined with precisely angled embankments, feeder canals, and sluices controlled by wooden gates wrapped in coir rope. It's so precise that some of the ancient tanks still function today. Now, here's where it gets even more elephanty. Some tanks, like the Kalawewa in the north-central province, were constructed with specific elephant use in mind. Wide, shallow areas allowed herds to enter without breaking the banks. Ramps were carved gently into the side so that tuskers could step in and out like they were entering a Roman spa. Think about that. They built luxury water access ramps for elephants 1,500 years ago, and you still can't get a clean cup of water out of your office water cooler without a struggle. Historians still argue whether these tanks were originally meant for agriculture and simply adapted later for elephants, or whether certain ones were purpose-built for elephant care from the start. The debate's fun, but the design tells its own story. Curved embankments prevent erosion from heavy treading. Overflow channels reroute water to secondary ponds for bathing overflow. And in some cases, strategically placed trees provided shade. Exactly where elephants like to linger post-dip. You step closer to the tank, where a few stones still bear faint chisel marks. Grooves for carrying water basins or anchoring ropes. Elephants didn't just bathe here. They were cleaned, oiled, and sometimes even treated medically in these spaces. Elephant hospitals? Yes, they existed. And this is where some of them happened. Under the open sky, near water, with handlers and herbalists working in tandem. You might not have pictured it this way, but elephant maintenance was a full-time job. There were caretakers known as panikiralas, experts in elephant care and behaviour. Each elephant had a primary handler, a mahout, who usually trained with that animal for years. But for the full health check, you'd need assistants. One to scrub the skin with coconut husks, one to inspect for ticks the size of your thumb, and maybe one to apply neem oil if there was a rash. Some tanks even had special docking points. Rings set into rocks, wooden posts embedded into granite ledges, all of them used to secure an elephant gently but firmly while it was tended to. You're standing near one now, a worn patch of rock with a shallow depression shaped oddly like an enormous bracelet. This was once a tethering point, and it wasn't about restraint, it was about routine. Elephants were creatures of habit. They like to schedule a specific tree, a certain water depth, a favourite boulder to lean on while someone exfoliated their flanks. You lean against that very boulder now, and the heat stored in it radiates back at you like a prehistoric space heater. You imagine a bull elephant, half submerged in the water beside it, eyes fluttering closed while two panikiralas scrub his ears clean. Maybe he sighs, maybe he rumbles gently, a sound felt more than heard, like a tremor in the chest. This was more than hygiene. It was bonding, ritual, and possibly the highlight of the elephant's week. Here's a quirky detail. Some records suggest that elephants had preferences for water temperature. That's right. Ancient Sri Lankan handlers occasionally warmed water, via sun or embankment placement, to encourage elephants to bathe without fuss. If you think you're high maintenance, remember someone once planned a water system around a cranky elephant's ideal tub temp. And there's more. Some tanks were linked into massive hydraulic networks that funneled water from distant sources. The most famous of these systems is the one at Parakramasamudra in Polonnaruwa, a reservoir so big it's still referred to as a sea. While mostly built for agriculture, its satellite ponds were definitely used for elephants. Not just because of their convenient location, but because of their gentle slope and soft silty bottom. Elephant feet are sensitive. Uneven surfaces cause problems. The engineers knew this. Now, if you've ever seen a 5-ton animal go for a swim, you know they don't just wade in like dainty ballerinas. It's a process. There's sniffing. There's trunk dipping. Then, with the grace of a collapsing stone temple, they drop in and disappear like ships. When they emerge, they're soaked and gleaming, ears flapping, eyes squinting in delight. And it wasn't just health and happiness that made all this necessary. It was performance. Elephants were constantly on display, in rituals, parades, battles. You couldn't present a dusty, crusty elephant to the masses. That would be like a king arriving in a dented chariot. Cleanliness was political. A well-groomed elephant was a symbol of national strength and divine favour. So, water wasn't a side note, it was a core part of statecraft. You trudge around the tank's edge, now just a shallow pond filled with reeds and a few disappointed frogs. But if you look closely, you can see the remnants of stone steps disappearing into the water. And if you squint even harder, into your imagination really, you can see the procession of caretakers leading elephants down for their daily cleanse. One last oddity. In a few locations, archaeologists have found ancient clay pipes near these tanks. Not for drainage, for music. Some speculate they were used to produce calming sounds, low rhythmic tones to soothe bathing elephants. Others argue they were just water control devices. Either way, it gives you the image of a massive animal humming to flute-toned pipes while getting a spa day. All of this, the tanks, the ramps, the routines, wasn't glamorous. It was methodical, dull even. But in the boring everyday work of engineering and cleaning, a civilization wove empathy and reverence into stone and water. They didn't just tolerate elephants, they designed for them. You sit down, legs dangling over the last step into the water. The air is cooler here. Frogs whisper their complaints into the twilight, and you realise something. If you wanted to hide in the past, really hide, disappear into a time that breathed slower and moved bigger, you'd come here. You'd follow the elephants to their baths. Because in the silence after the splash, the ancient world still lingers, waiting for the next trunk to dip into its reflection. You rise slowly, brushing a layer of dust from your knees, and the silence around the tank seems to follow you as you walk. The old elephant bathing pond recedes behind you, like a memory too grand to forget. But now you're headed towards something more structured, literally. The trees thin, the air warms, and you find yourself standing at the foot of something strange. A wide stone terrace, flat, deliberate, raised slightly above the surrounding terrain. It doesn't scream hotel at first, but this was once the elephant stables, and not just stables, an entire lodging complex for tuskers. Welcome to the ancient world's quietest 5-star hotel chain for elephants. No room service, no tiny soaps, no key cards. Just precision-engineered lodging, symmetrical layouts, and stone walkways wide enough to accommodate a swaggering herd. Here's where ancient Sri Lankans got serious about elephant logistics. And the closer you look, the more surreal it becomes. Start with the floor plan. Ancient elephant housing wasn't just a pen behind the palace, it was an architectural statement. At key cities like Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa, there were dedicated elephant quarters arranged in grid-like formations, like military barracks, but with trunk-friendly doorways. Rectangular stalls sat side by side in long rows, each big enough for a single elephant to lie down, stand up, and maybe rotate with a little dignity. Because when you're the king's prized pachyderm, you don't sleep in the dirt under a tree. You get your own bay, stone or wood framed, shaded, sometimes tiled, and always strategically located. How do we know? Because ancient inscriptions mention specific elephant housing compounds, and some ruins even show remnants of those structures. Foundation holes for support beams, feeding troughs carved from single blocks of limestone, and tethering posts smoothed down by decades of rubbing tusks. One such complex near Mihantile features what appear to be loading ramps, gentle inclines where elephants could step into an enclosure or even be hoisted for treatment or ceremonial dressing. Imagine the morning here, hundreds of years ago. Sunlight slants in, elephants shuffle in their stalls. Somewhere a mahout calls out a greeting, and the sleepy giant responds with a slow blink and a gust of trunk breath. Hay is already out. A bucket of jackfruit mash waits. Maybe there's temple music in the distance, maybe just the gentle creak of a wooden gate. You wouldn't survive long if you wandered into the wrong stall, but let's say, for fantasy's sake, they like you. One mainstream historical fact: Polonnaruwa, the ancient capital during the 11th and 12th centuries, had an entire quarter devoted to the Royal Elephant Corps. It was like a suburb within the capital. The city planners didn't treat elephants as tools or background scenery. They were integral. These weren't just stables. They were coordinated living facilities, complete with water access, food storage, and even designated entry plazas where elephants were led out in the mornings for duty. But here's your quirky tidbit for the night. Some elephant hotels had massage stations. Well, not exactly like the spa you're picturing with cucumber slices and relaxing whale sounds. But ancient texts refer to special wooden posts carved with ridges and bumps, strategically placed for elephants to rub against. It helped with shedding dead skin, soothed sore muscles, and, let's be honest, just felt good. A happy elephant is a cooperative elephant. The engineers knew this. Historians still argue whether the more elaborate elephant quarters were intended solely for royal elephants, or also included those used in agriculture and temple labour. Some evidence suggests a caste system of elephant lodging, nobles near the palace, commoners on the outskirts, which raises the question: did elephants know who among them had the better digs? Probably. Animals have egos too. You step deeper into the ruins, you start to notice patterns. Ventilation shafts, angled stone cutouts near the tops of walls, allowing air to pass through. Drainage trenches, lined with smooth stone, angled just right to carry away waste. Some stalls even had sloped floors, which may have been a sanitation measure or simply to prevent puddling during rain. Either way, it shows someone thought about the details. You know that phrase, designed with care? This was that, on an enormous wrinkled scale. And then there's the human element. Every elephant had at least one human handler, sometimes two. These handlers didn't sleep far away. Their quarters were often attached to or adjacent to the elephant stalls. Small rooms with clay lamps, storage shelves, and woven mats. These were the original bunk buddies. Mahouts and their elephants developed bonds so deep they could communicate through pressure, sound, and even breath. A hand on the tusk, a shift in posture, a whispered chant. This wasn't training. It was lifelong companionship. You walk past what remains of one of those handler quarters, a depression in the ground, some scattered pottery shards, a broken terracotta oil lamp with an elephant motif on the side. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe a sleepy mahout once lit it every night, whispering a lullaby to the beast just beyond the wooden wall. Here's a fun what if. Some fringe researchers believe elephant dreams were monitored. Not with EEGs or tech, obviously, but with behaviour. If an elephant slept restlessly, or let out strange noises in the night, it was logged. Some mahouts kept mental records of these incidents, using them to judge an elephant's mood or divine messages. Sounds silly. Until you remember people today read their horoscopes based on the moon's mood. What really elevates these ancient elephant hotels, though, is their position within the city. They weren't hidden. They weren't relegated to the outskirts like garbage dumps or livestock pens. They were front-facing, ceremonial, integrated. Visitors arriving at the palace often passed the elephant quarter first. That's not an accident. That's a statement. This kingdom is strong. This kingdom is majestic. This kingdom is brought to you by the world's most charismatic megafauna. And it's not just about strength or size. Elephants, in the Buddhist and Hindu traditions that shaped Sri Lankan culture, were sacred. Symbols of wisdom, patience, and cosmic memory. Housing them properly wasn't just kindness. It was spiritual hygiene. If you mistreated an elephant, you weren't just a bad king, you were a heretic. You pause near a circular depression that might have once held a water trough. It's dry now, filled with leaves and beetle husks, but if you close your eyes you can almost hear the deep glug of a trunk siphoning water, the splash of a happy foot, the gentle grunt of contentment. And here's your last strange note for the night. Some ancient texts suggest elephants were sung to sleep. Mahouts had lullabies, soft, repetitive chants they murmured while brushing the elephant's side. These songs weren't written down. They were passed on orally, generation to generation. Lost now, probably. But maybe, just maybe, some of that rhythm is still out there, echoing in the pattern of your own sleepy breath, if you listen hard enough. You turn away from the ruins, walking back along the wide path where hundreds of elephants once filed in and out, like commuters punching the clock at the slowest, most sacred job in the world. And as the night deepens around you, you realise these weren't just places to sleep, they were sanctuaries. For the elephants, yes, but maybe also for the humans who needed them. The air thickens slightly as you leave the elephant stables behind. You can almost taste the shift in the wind, less leafy, more earthy, like rainwater mixed with brick dust. You're walking now on what remains of an ancient cobbled path, worn smooth by centuries of feet, human and otherwise. This was once the main route leading to what you might call the front desk of the Elephant Hotel complex, the Royal Muster Yard. But tonight, you're not here to check in. You're here to witness something more chaotic, something organised, and yet somehow absurd. You're entering the world of elephant checkups, where medicine, mysticism, and guesswork blended into a wellness routine that would make your chiropractor cry. This wasn't a realm of white lab coats and sterile rooms. It was open-air healthcare, done with bare hands, herbal smoke, copper tools, and an alarming number of prayers. If you were an elephant with a headache in ancient Sri Lanka, this is where they brought you, not to a temple, not to a field, but to a designated area with strange tools, calm voices, and the kind of people who believed strongly in the power of turmeric and elephant gossip. Let's talk about the basics. Elephant care in ancient Sri Lanka was both astonishingly advanced and fantastically weird. On the one hand, handlers knew how to treat infections, reset dislocated joints, and apply salves to cracked feet. They had detailed regimens for rest, hydration, and diet. On the other hand, they also believed that an elephant's bad mood could be caused by planetary misalignment or an evil breeze that entered through its left ear. And you know what? Given how often your own Wi-Fi acts up during Mercury retrograde, who are we to judge? One mainstream historical fact: Sri Lanka's ancient veterinary traditions were documented in palm leaf manuscripts like the Gajah Sastra, a treatise on elephant management that included everything from dosages of herbal tonics to emotional counselling for aggressive tuskers. These weren't casual tips like, don't poke the elephant. They were meticulously detailed logs of symptoms, behaviours and holistic interventions. One common prescription for digestive upset, a blend of boiled tamarind bark, honey and warm water, administered via a funnel made from banana leaves. Basically, an organic smoothie before that was a thing. Of course, there was also the more, let's say, speculative side. Some mahouts believed that if an elephant was refusing to eat, the correct response was to whisper its name backwards at sunrise, or that the presence of a white crow meant an elephant's fever would break within the day. These are the kinds of beliefs that toe the line between folklore and desperate troubleshooting. But when your patient weighs 5 tons and could flip a cart with one sneeze, you'll try anything once. You kneel beside a patch of flattened stone where caretakers once did their work. The indentations are shallow but consistent. Bowls ground into the rock, mortar and pestle marks, and long shallow channels for draining liquids. A basic pharmacy for beings the size of boulders. This was where salves were mixed, usually from ingredients you'd find in your spice rack today. Clove oil for inflammation, cumin for bloating, cinnamon for circulation. You could season 1,000 curries with what passed for a prescription pad here. A quirky fringe theory suggests that elephant breath was used to diagnose illness, specifically by smelling it. Some caretakers were trained to sniff an elephant's trunk breath in the morning and determine if digestion was going well or if something was festering. It's not as bizarre as it sounds. Even modern doctors will tell you that sweet-smelling breath can indicate metabolic issues. But imagine the commitment it takes to voluntarily inhale morning breath from a 2-metre-long trunk. That's loyalty. You look up and picture the scene. A sick elephant brought in slowly, ears drooping, head bowed. A team of caretakers gathers, not with syringes or stethoscopes, but with bundles of herbs, strips of cloth and calm hands. They start with touch, palpating the shoulders, the back, the legs, checking for swelling, stiffness, heat. A young handler might take the pulse. Yes, elephants have a pulse, and it's usually found at the back of the ear. It's subtle. You'd have to concentrate. Maybe rest your hand there for a long time. Maybe even hum. Historians still argue whether the ancient health rituals leaned more toward practical care or symbolic ceremony. Some researchers argue that most of what passed for medicine was actually ritual, a performance meant to comfort both animal and human. Others say the results speak for themselves. These elephants lived long lives. They healed from wounds. They worked, played, and even danced during ceremonies. So maybe the line between medicine and magic was never all that important to begin with. And that brings us to the really fascinating part, the idea of elephant psychology. Ancient caretakers believed strongly in emotional balance. A frustrated elephant wasn't punished, it was consoled, given more water, moved to a shadier stall, brought its favourite treat, often coconut palm leaves or rice balls filled with jaggery. Angry elephants were sometimes sung to. Anxious ones were taken on long walks. If a female elephant was in distress, she might be paired with a calm matriarch for companionship. And if all else failed, a monk might be summoned to chant near her stall. Pause here, because that detail, that idea that emotional regulation was part of care, might be the most profound part of this whole elephant hotel concept. These weren't machines. They weren't even just animals. They were treated as co-workers, friends, sacred guests, creatures whose needs extended beyond the physical into the spiritual. And whether or not any of it was scientific, it was undeniably empathetic. You step carefully over what was once a fire pit, used to heat herbal poultices or boil water for steam therapy. The rocks are still slightly blackened, as if the last ember just winked out yesterday. You sit for a moment, feeling the heat that's long since faded, and imagine the late-night vigils kept here. A handler, half asleep, slumped against a post waiting for the fever to break, an elephant shifting restlessly beside him. A shared silence. A bond deeper than language. One last curious note. Some texts mention diagnostic dreams. In particularly severe cases, a monk or village elder would be asked to sleep near the sick elephant and report any dreams they had. If the dream featured white lotuses, that was a good sign. If it involved snakes, the illness would worsen. And if the elephant appeared in the dream and spoke, yes, spoke, it meant a full recovery was near. Of course, this only worked if the elephant's name was known to the dreamer. Details matter, even in dreams. You rise again, brushing imaginary ash from your hands. The medical plaza fades behind you as you walk. The shadows stretch longer now, but not ominous. Just patient, like the elephants once were. You pass what might have been a shelter, maybe a rest zone for recovering elephants. Smooth stone underfoot, room enough for a nap. You could lie down here just for a second and maybe, just maybe, feel a trunk brush past you in the dark, and you realise, for all its absurdity, all its ancient guesswork and turmeric-based cocktails, this place wasn't foolish. It was compassionate, it was attentive, and in some ways it was smarter than whatever wellness trend we're chasing this month. After all, when was the last time your doctor sang you to sleep? You keep walking. The path curves gently, framed by low mossy walls, and ahead a wide clearing opens under the moonlight. Your steps slow, not because you're tired, though yes, maybe a little, but because the air here feels regal, heavier somehow. This isn't just another corner of the elephant complex, this is the performance ground, the arena, the parade launch pad. You've arrived at the Royal Elephant Court, where tusked giants once practiced their pageantry, perfected their posture, and learned the delicate art of dramatic entrances. Think of it as a combination of training ground, red carpet, and personality test, all tailored for pachyderms. This is where elephants became celebrities. You pause on the edge, looking out at the flattened expanse where grass now grows through ancient cracks in the stone. But once, this would have been packed earth, carefully levelled, marked by flags, surrounded by an audience of monks, nobles, soldiers, and curious kids. Yes, not to mention the king himself seated high above on a pavilion, watching with practiced eyes as each elephant was led out, one by one, to perform its routine. That's right, routine. Because training an elephant wasn't just about obedience, it was theatre. It was about grace under pressure, about loyalty, charisma, poise. You weren't just showing the animal could lift logs or kneel on command. You were proving it could represent the kingdom with flair, could stand still during coronation, step in perfect sync during a temple procession, or strike an intimidating pose beside a royal chariot without flinching. And here's the wild part. Most of the time, they did. One mainstream historical fact: elephants in ancient Sri Lanka were not just used for war or labour, they were prominently featured in state ceremonies, temple festivals, and diplomatic receptions. They had names, rankings, and titles. The highest-ranking elephant was often given a ceremonial rank equal to that of a minister, and could even be included in formal palace records. Not bad for someone who bathes with their nose. But before those elephants ever made it to a temple parade, they had to graduate from here, from this very training ground. And graduation wasn't easy. You weren't just expected to walk straight and nod on cue. You had to be able to balance ceremonial regalia, heavy textiles, ornamental chains, crowns. You had to tolerate the sound of drums, flutes, and chanting. You had to ignore distractions like barking dogs, screaming children, and your own urge to chase butterflies. In other words, you had to be a performer. You stepped forward, imagining the scene. A long line of elephants, their backs draped in colourful cloths, their feet painted with turmeric and ash. Handlers whispering instructions, offering treats, soothing nerves. The drum beats slowly, then faster. One elephant steps forward, stops, bows its head, lifts its trunk in salute. The crowd erupts in respectful murmurs. The king nods. A lesser-known but completely real tidbit. Some elephants were trained to dance. Not exactly breakdancing, but rhythmic swaying and foot lifting in time with music. This was a crowd favourite, especially during New Year festivals. One elephant named Kandula, according to poetic sources, could mimic the beat of a temple drum with his steps. Is it true? Who knows? But you kind of want it to be. And here's the flip side. Elephants that didn't perform well weren't punished harshly. At least, not usually. They were retrained, reassigned, in some cases even retired early and sent to calmer environments, because failure to perform wasn't always the elephant's fault. Sometimes it was about temperament, or past trauma, or just plain stubbornness. And if that's not the most relatable thing you've heard all day, I don't know what is. Historians still argue whether this training system was purely about control, or if it also served a deeper purpose, like spiritual alignment. Some believe the rituals were designed to synchronize the elephant's energy with that of the kingdom, an almost metaphysical bonding. Others see it as a show of dominion, plain and simple. But when you watch an elephant bow with dignity in front of a royal court, it's hard to ignore the emotional complexity happening just below the surface. You sit on a broken step along the edge of the arena, running your fingers across the grooves carved into the stone. This is where handlers waited, where royal judges sat with ink-stained palms, ready to record performance scores in palm leaf ledgers. One document from the 12th century even includes a column for expressiveness. Yes, expressiveness. Apparently, elephants were judged not just on skill, but on style. So if you've ever felt unfairly critiqued for your vibe instead of your resume, well, join the club. Here's an odd footnote from the past. Some elephants were chosen not for their strength or size, but for their dreams. Or more accurately, the dreams of the person who captured them. If a dream featured a lake, a white flower, and the elephant calmly drinking water, that was considered a sign the animal was destined for greatness. Imagine getting picked for a prestigious role because someone once saw you sipping imaginary tea in a dreamscape. What a way to get promoted. You glance across the clearing and notice a line of large, flat stones forming a gentle arc. Scholars think these might have been the remains of a viewing platform, where the audience gathered under awnings or sat cross-legged on straw mats. You can picture it now. The rustle of silk robes, the clink of bangles, the smell of incense curling through the warm afternoon air, and at the centre of it all, a young elephant raising its trunk toward the sun, as if saluting the whole world. What really stands out, though, is the bond between the trainer and the animal. These performances didn't happen overnight. They were built over years, sometimes decades of trust. A nudge of the foot meant turn, a whistle meant wait, a low hum meant calm. It was like a secret language passed back and forth in glances and touches. And when the routine ended, and the crowd cheered, it wasn't just the elephant being honoured, it was the friendship. You rise slowly and walk the perimeter of the space, feeling the quiet grandeur in your bones. Even now, with the buildings gone and the applause long faded, something lingers here. Maybe it's the memory of movement. Maybe it's the echo of a rhythm you didn't know you remembered. Or maybe it's just the wind curling through the ruins like a sigh. But before you go, there's one more strange practice to mention. Elephant wardrobe fitting. Yes, fittings. Before major events, elephants were brought to tailors. Well, not tailors exactly, but cloth makers who specialised in draping fabric over large, moving, unpredictable bodies. They measured neck circumference, spine length, head-to-trunk ratios. Also, the ceremonial capes and face coverings would fit snugly and look glorious. Because when you're an elephant in a national festival, you don't just show up, you show out. You leave the parade ground with a strange sense of reverence, not because it was sacred exactly, but because it was serious, thoughtful, full of intention. These weren't performances for spectacle's sake. They were declarations. The elephants weren't accessories. They were ambassadors, walking, trumpeting proof of a kingdom's discipline, beauty and balance. And as you follow the cobbled path away from the training yard, you can't help but wonder, if an elephant can be trained to dance for joy, could you? You leave the parade ground behind, stepping onto a narrower path where the sounds change. Less drum beats and cheers, more the soft clatter of wooden carts and the occasional distant bellow of an elephant calling to a friend. This is where logistics happen. The Elephant Hotel isn't just about stabling and pampering or dazzling performances. No, it was a sprawling hub of trade, transport, and yes, elephant-sized hotel business. You're entering the marketplace of the pachyderm world, where elephants met merchants, goods, and a surprising variety of creatures that came along for the ride. Imagine a place buzzing with life. The scent of spices, cinnamon, cardamom, pepper, wafts through the air, mixed with the more pungent aroma of hay, dung, and something faintly medicinal. Stalls lined with woven baskets spill over with fresh fruit and root vegetables, jackfruit, bananas, yams. Nearby, smiths hammer on anvils, crafting ornate harnesses and tools not just for elephants but for the humans who managed them. The clinking of metal melds with the chatter of traders bartering in Sinhala, Tamil, and whatever ancient dialects mixed into the region's rich tapestry. Elephants weren't just passengers or beasts of burden here. They were currency, status symbols, and sometimes even moving warehouses. In fact, some elephants carried special storage bags, almost like built-in backpacks made from durable leather and cloth, designed to hold valuable cargo. You could say they were the original 4x4 pickup trucks with trunks. One mainstream fact: ancient Sri Lanka was a major hub in Indian Ocean trade networks, linking Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and beyond. Elephants played a surprising role in this ecosystem, not only transporting goods inland but also impressing visiting dignitaries with their majesty, serving as diplomatic gifts or symbols of alliance. They were sometimes featured in grand trading ceremonies, where the arrival of an elephant caravan signalled prosperity and power. A quirky tidbit to keep in mind: merchants often employed elephant whisperers, whose job was less about riding or handling, and more about managing the animal's moods during long trading journeys. These whisperers developed special whistles, songs, and even scented cloths to calm or motivate their charges. Some claim that the scents included extracts of sandalwood and jasmine, believed to soothe elephants much like lavender soothes humans. It's a bit like aromatherapy, but for giant 4-ton clients with massive appetites. Now, here's a debate historians still argue about. Were elephants used as regular pack animals, or reserved mostly for ceremonial and elite transport? Some archaeological evidence suggests elephants hauled heavy goods through jungle routes that were impassable for carts or horses, making them essential for trade logistics. However, others argue that because elephants required enormous amounts of food and water, they were simply too costly for everyday hauling, and were mostly symbols of prestige and power rather than practical workhorses. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, depending on the region nearer. You stroll past a cluster of large wooden crates marked with intricate symbols and faded inscriptions, probably goods from foreign lands like exotic spices or silk. Nearby, a massive elephant stands tethered, its sides bulging with bags full of dried fish and rice sacks. A young mahout gently strokes the animal's trunk, murmuring soothing words in a sing-song voice that sounds almost like a lullaby. And you spot something unexpected. A tiny monkey perched confidently on the back of one elephant. The monkey, no bigger than your fist, seems entirely at ease, chatting animatedly with the elephant's handler as if negotiating an invisible contract. Turns out monkeys were sometimes employed as early warning systems for elephant caravans, alerting to nearby predators, thieves, or even sudden changes in weather. You might say the monkeys were the elephant's security team shrieking "intruder alert" before the mahouts even noticed. The market hums with quiet tension, the kind that comes with high stakes and heavy loads. You catch snippets of conversations about upcoming journeys, plans to send elephants and goods deep into the hill country, across treacherous passes, or down to bustling coastal ports. Each route a test of endurance, skill, and luck. You wander toward a small stall where dried herbs hang in bunches, and a wizened woman sorts through them with practiced hands. She's a supplier of herbal remedies not just for humans but for elephants too. You overhear her explaining how certain leaves can help soothe skin irritations from harness chafing or keep away biting insects. A touch of neem, a pinch of turmeric, and suddenly your elephant's itching problem might just vanish. Here's an intriguing fringe idea. Some believe that certain spices used in elephant care also acted as natural insect repellents for the humans travelling with them. So when you're roasting cardamom or cinnamon over a fire, you're not just flavouring tea. You might be keeping away mosquitoes and ticks, sharing a tiny ecosystem of protection. You walk past a group of men loading large clay pots onto an elephant's side bags. The pots contain water, a precious resource on long journeys. Elephants require hundreds of litres daily, enough to drown a small village. And so, water storage and rationing was a major logistical challenge. The careful loading and balancing of these containers was an art form, requiring precise measurement and trust between man and beast. An elephant's diet was another hot topic. It wasn't just leaves and grass. These majestic creatures were often fed lavish meals during travel and at the hotel, including rice gruel mixed with jaggery, a type of palm sugar, coconut meat, and the occasional handful of sweet fruits. Sometimes, special treats like sugarcane stalks or banana stems were saved for celebrations or as rewards after a successful journey. You pause, watching a mahout stroke his elephant's forehead, murmuring softly as the animal gently waves its trunk in response. The bond here feels almost sacred, part business, part friendship, part mutual reliance. Before you move on, one last curious note. In some trading communities, elephants were insured, not with contracts or banks, but through local agreements where the loss or injury of an elephant during trade would be compensated by collective village contributions or merchant guilds. It was a form of ancient risk management, and it worked surprisingly well, proving once again that even long ago people tried to find practical ways to soften life's bumps, even when those bumps weighed several tons. You leave the marketplace buzzing quietly behind you, feeling the pulse of an ancient economy that thrived on cooperation, trust, and a shared respect for these enormous, gentle giants. You step away from the marketplace's hum and move toward the quieter edges of the Elephant Hotel complex, where the real magic of care unfolds. This is the veterinary wing, though of course they didn't call it that back then. Instead, it was a sacred space where knowledge passed through generations of elephant keepers, healers, and herbalists who learned to read the giant beast's subtle signs of pain and health, like doctors reading a pulse. If you ever imagine ancient medicine as mostly superstition, this place might just change your mind. Picture a shaded grove of tall trees where thick mats of moss and fragrant herbs hang from branches. The air here smells faintly of turmeric and camphor, natural antiseptics and healers woven into the landscape itself. The ground is soft underfoot, cushioned with layers of dried leaves and straw, perfect for an elephant to lie down comfortably if needed. Here, the handlers attend to wounds, infections, and aches from the endless training and journeys, while the healers prepare remedies with painstaking care. One mainstream fact: Sri Lanka has one of the oldest continuous traditions of elephant medicine in the world. Ancient texts and inscriptions describe treatments for abscesses, cracked nails, digestive problems, and even dental issues. Yes, elephants get toothaches. The remedies included herbal pastes, poultices, steam baths, and massages. Elephant massage? You bet. It was believed to not only aid healing, but also strengthen the bond between animal and caretaker. You watch a handler gently lift an elephant's massive foot to examine a crack in its nail. The elephant flinches slightly but remains calm, trusting the touch. Nearby, a healer mixes powdered herbs with honey to create a soothing salve, then carefully applies it with broad, slow strokes. The precision and patience here are astonishing, like treating a living sculpture made of muscle, skin, and spirit. But here's a quirky detail you might not expect. Some elephant doctors use medicinal leeches. Yes, those tiny bloodsuckers, long infamous in human medicine, were placed strategically on the elephant's legs to reduce swelling or draw out toxins. The image of a 4-ton elephant patiently enduring a leech bite is both oddly hilarious and strangely moving. If that doesn't make you smile, nothing will. Historians still argue whether these treatments were mostly empirical or deeply ritualistic. Some scholars suggest that the healing process involved sacred chants and offerings, blurring the line between medicine and spirituality. Others believe the knowledge was purely practical, handed down through observation and experience. Maybe it was both. After all, when you care for creatures this big and ancient, science and spirit often walk hand in hand. You notice a small fire crackling nearby, with steam rising from a large pot of water infused with fragrant leaves. The elephant is about to receive a steam bath, another ancient therapy believed to cleanse skin, relax muscles and repel pests. The mahouts work quickly, pouring warm water over the elephant's shoulders, trunk and sides, then scrubbing with bundles of fresh leaves that release their oils in the process. The elephant closes its eyes in apparent bliss. You almost want a steam bath yourself, but without the size and dirt. They say elephants are among the few animals that can sweat, but not enough to cool themselves fully, hence the importance of water therapy. There's a fascinating side story here. Some elephant hospitals had quarantine areas used to isolate sick animals and prevent the spread of disease. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a veterinary ICU, complete with attendants constantly monitoring the patient's breathing, eating and movement. This level of care is pretty remarkable, considering the era and the sheer scale of these animals. You overhear a conversation between two keepers discussing diet adjustments for a recovering elephant, adding more coconut meat for calories, reducing fibrous leaves to ease digestion. They talk about the signs of a healthy elephant: bright eyes, a smooth trunk, rhythmic breathing. It's clear they know these creatures inside and out, and yes, elephants did get colds. Apparently, just like you, they sometimes sneezed in inconvenient moments, much to the amusement or frustration of their handlers. There's even a cheeky proverb recorded from that time comparing an elephant's stubbornness during illness to a grumpy old man refusing to take medicine. Before you leave this quiet sanctuary, there's a mysterious element to mention. Some treatments involved rare ingredients like crushed pearls or powdered gemstones. These were not just for show, but believed to have healing properties, both physical and spiritual. This overlaps with ancient Ayurveda practices in Sri Lanka, which considered the elephant a creature of immense cosmic significance. So, when you imagine a royal elephant getting a gem-infused poultice, you're not far off. You step back into the warmer sunlight, feeling the contrast between this place of gentle care and the bustling energy of the elephant parade grounds or marketplace. It's a reminder that behind the grandeur and ceremony was a deeply human effort to nurture, protect, and honour these remarkable animals. And as you walk on, you carry with you a sense of wonder at the ancient relationship between humans and elephants. One built not just on utility, but on respect, empathy, and an understanding that caring for something so huge means thinking a little bigger yourself. You keep moving deeper into the Elephant Hotel complex, leaving the quiet veterinary groves behind and entering what feels like a different world altogether. Here the focus shifts from care to leisure. The elephant spa, if you will. Yes, you heard that right. A spa for elephants. Imagine a sprawling series of shallow pools and mud baths carved into the earth, fed by natural springs or carefully diverted streams. It's a sanctuary of cool water and thick, soothing mud where elephants went to relax, cool off, and indulge in a bit of luxury after the grueling demands of royal duties and long journeys. You step cautiously to the edge of one such pool. The water gleams under the sunlight, dappled with floating lotus flowers and surrounded by soft reeds. Nearby, an enormous elephant stands knee-deep, swirling mud with its trunk and flinging it across its broad back with apparent satisfaction. Watching this makes you realise that elephant self-care is both practical and pleasurable. The mud cools the skin, protects against insect bites, and even helps remove parasites. Plus, it probably just feels awesome. One mainstream fact: Sri Lankan kings built elaborate bathing tanks specifically for elephants within palace grounds and elephant hotels. These tanks often had ramps or gentle slopes to help the animals enter and exit easily. Bathing elephants was an important daily ritual, not only for hygiene but also as a public spectacle, symbolising the king's care for his royal assets. But here's a fun fact many don't know. Some pools were scented with crushed jasmine or frangipani flowers to create a calming atmosphere. The scent probably made the elephant spa experience feel more like a tropical day at a fancy resort than a chore. Can you imagine the mahouts relaxing nearby with their own jasmine tea while their charges wallowed happily? Historians still debate whether these bathing rituals served mainly practical health purposes or had a deeper symbolic meaning. Some argue that washing elephants was a form of purification, cleansing not just the body but the spirit, especially before major ceremonies or battles. Others think it was mostly about maintaining the animal's appearance and comfort. Maybe, as with many ancient customs, it was a little bit of both. As you watch the elephant sling mud, you notice the skilled hands of mahouts guiding their charges gently but firmly. They use long sticks with soft brushes attached, basically giant elephant back scrubbers, to reach spots the animals can't reach themselves. The animals seem to enjoy the attention, swaying slightly as their skin is massaged and scrubbed. There's an unspoken trust here that takes years to develop. Nearby, you catch sight of a smaller elephant, possibly a calf, splashing joyfully with its trunk while its mother stands patiently, eyes half closed in contentment. It's a scene of quiet joy that feels timeless. You almost forget you're standing in ruins, imagining instead a moment frozen in time when the air was filled with the sounds of water splashing, soft rumbles of elephant chatter, and the occasional chirp of birds. Here's a quirky side note. Some mahouts believed that playing certain types of music, flutes, drums, or chanting during bathing helped relax elephants even more, making the mud baths a kind of elephant spa party. It might sound silly, but given how sensitive elephants are to sound, it probably worked better than you'd think. You notice the edges of the pools aligned with smooth stones polished by centuries of elephant visits. Some of these stones bear faint carvings, perhaps inscriptions or offerings from grateful kings or handlers. A few scholars suggest these may have been prayers or blessings seeking the protection and health of the elephants. Others think they were simple markers, helping to keep track of maintenance or water levels. You step down to touch the cool water, feeling its refreshing chill seep into your fingers. There's something meditative about this place, a reminder that even the mightiest creatures need moments of rest, cleansing, and renewal. It's a shared need, really, a connection that bridges species and centuries. Before you move on, a final surprising fact. Elephants' favourite mud for bathing was often rich in iron oxide, giving it a reddish hue. This natural mud mask wasn't just cosmetic. It actually helped protect their skin from sunburn and insect bites. So next time you slap on sunscreen, remember, elephants have been mastering sun protection since forever. As you leave the spa area, you feel a sense of calm settling over you. The Elephant Hotel is not just a place of work or ceremony, it's a place of life, with rhythms and rituals designed to honour the natural needs of these extraordinary animals. And in that, there's a lesson for all of us. No matter how big or small, how ancient or modern, we all deserve moments of care and calm. You step away from the soothing waters and move toward the hotel's quieter corners, where the sleeping quarters for the elephants stand, a curious blend of practicality and surprisingly thoughtful design. Imagine vast open-air shelters with towering wooden pillars and high thatched roofs, built wide enough to accommodate these enormous creatures comfortably, yet open enough to let in the cooling night breezes. These weren't just basic stalls. They were carefully crafted resting places reflecting a deep understanding of elephant behaviour and needs. The floor here is layered with thick mats of dried grass and fragrant leaves, providing a soft bed that absorbed moisture and kept the elephants off cold, damp earth. You notice small piles of salt crystals near the sleeping spots, natural mineral supplements that elephants like to lick during their downtime. The salt was important for their health. especially after long days hauling loads or performing under the hot sun. One mainstream fact to ground you: ancient Sri Lankan elephant hotels had specific rest areas, designed not only for comfort but also for social interaction among elephants. These animals are highly social and intelligent, and researchers still argue about how their complex social dynamics influence the architecture of their accommodations. Some think the sleeping quarters were arranged to encourage peaceful gatherings and avoid conflicts, while others suggest the design prioritized easy access to water and food. You catch a faint sound, low rumbles and soft trumpeting, and realize it's a nighttime elephant conversation. Elephants communicate with subtle vocalizations and vibrations felt through the ground, creating a quiet chorus that connects the herd even while they rest. Imagine drifting off to sleep surrounded by that gentle hum, a natural lullaby that only a few creatures on Earth can truly appreciate. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient elephant hotels included small elephant libraries, stacks of wooden plaques inscribed with caretaking instructions, dietary notes, and even weather predictions. These records were kept by mahouts and healers to ensure consistent care. It's funny to think of this as one of the earliest examples of animal husbandry record keeping, almost like the original Elephant Yelp reviews, though probably less snarky. Historians still debate the extent to which elephants were domesticated versus simply habituated to human presence. Some argue that the elephants had significant freedom even within these resting areas, choosing where and when to lie down or socialize. Others suggest that in royal contexts the animals were more controlled, with handlers closely managing their movements and routines. The truth, as usual, likely varied across time and place. You notice an interesting detail. The sleeping quarters often had built-in scratching posts made from rough tree trunks or stone pillars. Elephants love to rub their skin against textured surfaces to relieve itches and remove parasites. It's almost like a giant version of a cat's favourite scratching post, but with a bit more dignity and less claw noise. Nearby, a mahout quietly prepares a midnight snack, chunks of sweet banana and tender coconut meat carefully laid out on a woven tray. Feeding elephants at night was common practice to keep their energy up for early morning duties. You might think this sounds like over-the-top pampering, but when you're caring for an animal weighing thousands of kilos, every calorie counts. A fascinating fringe theory suggests that some ancient elephant hotels included dream guardians, specially trained mahouts who stayed awake at night, interpreting elephants' restless movements and vocalizations as signs of dreams or premonitions. These handlers might have recited chants or offered calming oils to ease the animal's sleep, blending caretaking with spiritual care. It's one of those charming crossovers where science meets mysticism. You step back, watching the moonlight filter through the open roof beams, casting long shadows over the resting elephants. The scene feels peaceful, almost sacred. It pours in the relentless rhythm of daily life. Just before you move on, consider this. Ancient Sri Lankan elephant hotels were among the first places to experiment with animal welfare, centuries before the phrase existed. The combination of architecture, diet, medical care, and behavioural understanding reveals a sophisticated relationship that went far beyond mere utility. It was in many ways an early model of coexistence. As you leave the sleeping quarters behind, the soft night air carries the distant echo of elephant rumbles and the rustle of leaves. You realise this place was more than a hotel. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a hub of ancient ingenuity where humans and elephants lived intertwined lives, each shaping the other. You leave behind the soft shadows of the elephant sleeping quarters and find yourself approaching the heart of activity, the training arena. This is where the youngest elephants, still raw and curious, are shaped into the disciplined, graceful giants who will carry kings, pull royal chariots, and perform in majestic ceremonies. Picture a wide, flat clearing encircled by low stone walls, offering a natural stage framed by sprawling banyan trees whose aerial roots twist and tangle like ancient ropes dangling from time itself. The scent here is earthy and alive, a mix of rich soil, crushed grass, and the faint musky aroma of the elephants themselves. You can almost feel the charged energy, like a classroom buzzing with nervous excitement before the lesson begins. Watching a young elephant undergo its training, you notice the patient attentiveness of the mahout, the elephant's lifelong caretaker and mentor. The mahout doesn't shout or push harshly. Instead, he moves deliberately and speaks in a quiet, steady voice, offering encouragement with subtle gestures and soft taps from a slender wooden stick. The elephant, still learning to balance its bulk and coordinate its massive limbs, lifts a heavy log with awkward determination and steps carefully over obstacles laid out like a test course. You sense an unspoken dialogue between man and beast, a conversation built on trust and mutual respect, developing slowly through countless hours. A solid historical fact anchors this scene. In ancient Sri Lanka, elephant training was a long, respectful process. Unlike the stereotypical image of brutal trainers, mahouts emphasized patience and empathy, using calm voice commands and gentle prodding rather than force. The process could span years, during which elephants learned not only physical skills but also social behaviors and the subtle cues necessary to work harmoniously with humans. This approach demonstrates a remarkable early understanding of animal psychology and welfare. Here's a quirky tidbit that might surprise you. Many mahouts incorporated soft lullabies or rhythmic chanting into their training sessions. These songs weren't just for human entertainment, they were believed to soothe the elephant's nerves and help them focus. Passed down through generations like treasured family heirlooms, these chants created an almost hypnotic background hum that guided the animals through their lessons. You can almost imagine the scene, the low murmur of human voices blending with the elephant's steady breathing, and the rustling of leaves, a calm symphony of learning and bonding. Historians continue to debate the origins of these training techniques. Some argue that Sri Lankan mahouts adapted methods from the Indian subcontinent, incorporating local innovations tailored to the island's climate and the particular temperament of its elephants. Others suggest a more independent development, with training evolving organically from centuries of hands-on experience. What's clear is that these methods were both practical and deeply rooted in cultural tradition, blending the pragmatic with the ceremonial. As you watch, the mahout pauses to offer the elephant a small piece of jaggery, a sweet palm sugar treat, along with a sprig of sacred basil. This ritual, seemingly simple, carried deep meaning. It was believed to bless the training session with good fortune and strengthen the spiritual connection between handler and elephant. It's a charming reminder that ancient caretakers saw their relationship with elephants as a partnership, not just a job, offering kindness and ritual alongside discipline, an intriguing detail you might not expect. Some training arenas were adorned with carved stone markers depicting various postures and commands, essentially creating early instruction manuals etched into the very fabric of the space. These carvings helped preserve vital knowledge and ensured that traditions were passed down accurately through generations of mahouts. It's a testament to how seriously this art of training was taken, blending practicality with a reverence for continuity. Nearby, you overhear a scholarly debate, the kind that could keep historians up at night. Did these training grounds enforce strict control, or did they allow elephants some agency and choice in their daily routines? The evidence is mixed. Some inscriptions suggest a regimented environment with strict schedules and punishments for disobedience. Others praise the intimate, almost familial bonds between mahouts and their elephants, hinting at relationships based on mutual trust rather than dominance. Perhaps the truth lies in the middle, varying with the individual elephant, the mahout's temperament, and the demands of the moment. You notice the young elephant finally resting under a shady tree, trunk curled gently around its leg, eyes half closed in contentment. It's a powerful image. This enormous creature, so strong and imposing, vulnerable and trusting in the presence of its human caretaker. You realise that elephant training wasn't merely about strength or obedience. It was a slow dance of communication, respect, and patience that shaped both species. Taking a final look at the arena, you appreciate the ancient people's dedication to nurturing these magnificent creatures. The elephant hotels weren't just stables or holding pens, they were carefully designed ecosystems where animals were trained, cared for and celebrated. These places embodied a unique harmony between humans and elephants, one built on understanding, respect, and a deep cultural appreciation for the giants who shaped Sri Lanka's history. You pause a moment, letting this thought settle. Behind the grandeur of royal processions and the imposing presence of war elephants, there lies a quieter story. A story of patient teaching, gentle care, and shared lives. It's a story that whispers across centuries, inviting you to see elephants not just as beasts of burden, but as partners in a remarkable ancient world. You step away from the training arena, your footsteps taking you toward the bustling heart of the Elephant Hotel, the kitchens. This is where the enormous appetites of these majestic beasts are met with a surprising level of care and culinary precision. Imagine a large open courtyard, bathed in the soft light filtering through woven palm fronds, where baskets brimming with fresh fruits, heaps of leafy greens and piles of roots and tubers fill the space. The air is heavy with sweet, earthy fragrances, the ripe banana's scent mingling with the tangy bite of jackfruit, the subtle spice of turmeric, and the fresh green aroma of freshly cut bamboo shoots. It's a sensory feast, not just for the elephants, but for you standing there, watching the rhythms of an ancient culinary ritual unfold. The elephant kitchens of ancient Sri Lanka were far from simple. They were carefully designed systems capable of feeding dozens of elephants every day. Each of these creatures capable of consuming up to 150 kilograms, around 330 pounds, of food daily. Imagine the logistics. Mountains of fresh produce arriving from the surrounding jungles and plantations, carefully sorted, chopped and portioned by skilled workers. It's a scene buzzing with activity, workers moving with practiced efficiency, arranging food in huge clay pots and woven baskets, while others prepare medicinal herbs to be mixed in with the daily meals. One well-documented fact: the diet of these royal elephants was meticulously planned to balance nutrition and taste. It wasn't enough simply to fill their bellies. Their food needed to keep them strong, healthy and energetic for their diverse roles, whether carrying kings into battle, pulling royal carriages during festivals, or performing in religious ceremonies. Certain foods, like turmeric and specific herbs, were believed to have healing and health-boosting properties. This early form of veterinary nutrition reflects a surprisingly advanced understanding of animal care in a time long before modern science. You might find it charming that some caretakers guarded secret recipes for special elephant treats, passed down like prized family heirlooms. These might include mixtures of jaggery, palm sugar, blended with creamy coconut milk or crushed seeds and nuts thought to boost stamina and vitality. Some stories even suggest that mahouts concocted special herbal tonics designed to soothe tired muscles or improve digestion. In a way, this was the ancient version of a gourmet meal plan tailored specifically for giant clients with very particular tastes. Archaeological digs in places like the ancient city of Anuradhapura have uncovered evidence of specialized storage facilities within elephant hotels. Cool underground pits and large clay jars used to preserve food against the tropical heat. These innovations prevented spoilage and ensured that elephants were always supplied with fresh, nutritious meals regardless of season. You could say the ancients had a pretty good grasp on food preservation, managing giant refrigerators made of earth and clay, long before electricity was a thing. You might chuckle at the thought that some elephants were apparently quite the picky eaters. Tales from mahouts tell of elephants turning their trunks up at meals that weren't prepared just right, refusing food that was too old, not sweet enough, or missing their favourite ingredients. Imagine having to cater to the whims of a creature weighing several tons but acting like a fussy toddler when it came to dinner. Mahouts often had to go to great lengths to keep their elephants happy and well fed, tweaking recipes and preparation methods like attentive chefs in a royal kitchen. There's a fascinating debate among historians about how standardized these diets were. Did royal elephant kitchens follow strict, detailed guidelines set by the kingdom, or did caretakers improvise based on what was locally available? Some argue for a rigorous system, pointing to texts that outline specific feeding regimens, while others suggest a more flexible approach adapted to the shifting seasons and regional plant varieties. It's likely that both were true, depending on the time and place, reflecting the dynamic relationship between humans, elephants, and their environment. As you stand by a trough, you watch a mahout gently peel strips of fresh sugar cane for a young elephant, humming a soft tune. The elephant munches slowly, trunk curling to bring each piece to its mouth with surprising dexterity. The mahout's voice is low and comforting, and the mutual trust between them is evident. Feeding time isn't just about nourishment. It's an intimate ritual that strengthens the bond between caretaker and beast, a quiet moment in the midst of busy days. You can almost hear whispers of old stories, like that of a mahout who created a secret herbal blend that supposedly made his elephant perform better in royal ceremonies, or another who was famed for calming even the most stubborn beasts with a special jaggery mix. These legends, whether fully true or not, reveal how deeply intertwined elephant care was with culture, belief, and practical knowledge. The elephant kitchen courtyard is alive with movement. The rustling of leaves, the clatter of clay pots, the soft murmur of voices, and the occasional trumpet of contented elephants. It's a vivid reminder that feeding these giants was no small task. It required deep knowledge of plants, nutrition, and each elephant's individual needs and preferences. The elephant hotel kitchens were sanctuaries of sustenance, blending science, tradition, and care into a living system that kept the royal pachyderms strong and happy. Taking a deep breath of the sweet, humid air, you step back, feeling a new admiration for the ancient Sri Lankans who mastered the complex art of feeding and caring for these incredible creatures. In this courtyard, you glimpse a world where humans and elephants lived and worked side by side, linked by food, ritual, and respect. A partnership that helped build an empire. You step away from the fragrant chaos of the kitchens and make your way toward the water gardens, a tranquil oasis tucked within the Elephant Hotel grounds. Picture a series of wide, shallow pools and gently winding streams carved carefully into the earth, their edges lined with smooth river stones worn soft by centuries of flowing water and elephant footsteps. Towering palms sway overhead, their fronds whispering in the warm breeze, while vibrant flowering bushes add bursts of colour and sweet perfume to the scene. The sun filters through the canopy in a dappled dance of light and shadow, playing across the water's shimmering surface. The air smells of fresh water and damp earth, cool and comforting against the humid tropical heat. Somewhere in the distance, the steady splashing of water echoes, punctuated by the soft rumble of contented elephants enjoying their daily bath. Bathing the elephants was not merely a matter of cleanliness or practicality. It was a deeply ingrained ritual that refreshed both body and spirit, a moment of calm amid the demands of royal life. Historical records and ancient inscriptions confirm that these water gardens were thoughtfully engineered to accommodate dozens of elephants simultaneously. Wide stone ramps and gently sloping platforms led the massive animals safely into and out of the pools, while sturdy wooden brushes made from coir, the fibrous husks of coconuts, were used by mahouts and attendants to scrub the elephants' thick hides, removing dirt, parasites, and dead skin. The careful design of these spaces highlights the ancient Sri Lankans' profound understanding of elephant needs and comfort. A firmly established fact is that elephants require frequent bathing to maintain healthy skin and regulate their body temperature, especially in the steamy tropical climate of Sri Lanka. Bathing served to wash away sweat and mud, reduce irritation from biting insects, and soothe tired muscles after long days spent carrying heavy loads or performing ceremonial duties. The ancients clearly recognized this necessity and treated bathing not as a chore but as a vital part of the elephant's well-being. But bathing wasn't all business. The elephants often turned these water sessions into moments of joyful playfulness. Some historical descriptions and folklore recount how mahouts encouraged the elephants to engage in water games, spraying each other with jets from their trunks, splashing wildly, and even dancing in the shallow pools. You can almost hear the laughter and playful trumpeting as these gentle giants revelled in the cool water, shedding the weight of their enormous size and the seriousness of their royal duties. This side of elephant life, the carefree, almost childlike exuberance, is a surprising and heartwarming glimpse rarely captured in traditional histories. Scholars continue to debate whether the bathing rituals had deeper spiritual significance beyond their practical purpose. Some argue that water was seen as sacred, a purifier that cleansed not only the body but the spirit of both elephant and handler. Bathing may have symbolized renewal, purification, and harmony, especially within the royal household, where elephants were revered and often linked to divine symbolism. Others suggest the rituals were primarily functional, designed to maintain the elephant's health and appearance for their important ceremonial roles. Either way, the water gardens were more than mere washing stations. They were sacred spaces where nature, ritual, and care merged. As you watch a pair of elephants spraying each other gleefully with their trunks, the playful splashes sending arcs of water glinting in the sunlight, you notice the soft chuckles and gentle encouragement of their mahouts. These caretakers move with an easy familiarity, guiding the elephants with kindness and quiet patience rather than force. The intimate bond between human and animal here is palpable, far removed from the harsh images of discipline that history sometimes paints. It reminds you that even creatures as large and powerful as elephants thrive best in an environment filled with respect and affection. There's also a charming local tale about a particular elephant known for her cheeky tricks during bath time. According to legend, she would hide behind reeds at the water's edge, waiting to suddenly spray her unsuspecting mahout with a surprising blast of water. This playful prank became famous among the caretakers, who looked forward to her mischievous antics. Stories like this reveal the personalities behind the massive forms, showing elephants as intelligent, social beings capable of humour and affection. Nearby, a lively academic debate unfolds over whether the architectural principles used in designing these elephant water gardens influenced the development of later royal baths and temple pools across South Asia. Some experts suggest that the integration of functionality and aesthetic beauty in the water gardens inspired subsequent aquatic architecture, merging utility with ceremonial elegance. Others contend that the similarities are coincidental, or the result of parallel development in different regions. Whatever the truth, the elephant water gardens remain a remarkable testament to the ancient Sri Lankans' ingenuity. You breathe in the fresh, cool air scented with water and flowering plants, watching sunlight dance on the glistening back of a wet elephant as it steps slowly from the pool, droplets cascading off its rough skin. The gentle splashes and the low rumble of contented elephants feel like a lullaby sung by the earth itself, a soothing end to a long day of work and play. It's a quiet moment of peace, a pause in the ongoing story of these ancient hotels where elephants were not just royal possessions, but beloved members of a complex and caring community. Standing there, surrounded by the harmony of water, stone, and life, you feel the connection between humans and elephants across centuries, an enduring partnership built on understanding, kindness, and respect. This is more than history. It is a living legacy, whispered softly by the cool waters and the gentle giants who bathe within them. You step away from the soothing water gardens and make your way toward the elephant stables, an area that feels like a sanctuary amidst the sprawling grounds of the Elephant Hotel. Imagine towering, open-sided shelters crafted with a mastery of natural materials, strong teak beams forming the skeleton, walls woven from bamboo strips, and roofs thickly layered with palm fronds and dried leaves, expertly thatched to keep out the frequent tropical rains and searing sun. The whole structure breathes with the rhythms of the island's climate, providing shade, ventilation, and protection. As you approach, The earthy, slightly musky scent of dry grass mingled with the faint aroma of elephant sweat and skin greets you. This is a place where giants find rest, a refuge from the days-long labours. The stables themselves are vast, designed to comfortably house dozens of these enormous creatures at once. Elephants, you know, are surprisingly social animals. Their wild herds in the jungle form intricate family groups with strong bonds and hierarchies, and this social instinct carried over even when they lived in royal captivity. Ancient Sri Lankan elephant hotels, therefore, had stables arranged not simply as a series of individual stalls, but as communal spaces encouraging interaction. The layout balanced the need for companionship with space to retreat. After all, even elephants appreciate privacy now and then. Large platforms raised slightly above ground level provide dry, comfortable resting areas, especially important during the monsoon season, when floods can turn the earth to mud. These platforms were padded with fresh straw, dry leaves, and even fragrant herbs to cushion the elephants' massive bodies. A well-established historical fact reminds you that elephants sleep surprisingly little. Unlike humans who might spend 8 hours in bed, elephants usually manage only 2 to 4 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period, and often in short bursts rather than one long stretch. They sometimes sleep standing up, and sometimes lie down when they feel safe and comfortable enough to fully relax. The stables catered to these habits, designed with sturdy posts and open spaces so the elephants could move around freely and settle in whichever position suited them best. After all, a well-rested elephant was crucial for the kingdom's success, strong, alert and cooperative for work, ceremonies or battle. But the stables were more than just resting spots. They also doubled as centres for elephant healthcare. Certain sections were reserved as makeshift infirmaries where sick or injured elephants were treated. Mahouts and specialised elephant doctors, who combined practical experience with herbal knowledge passed down for generations, would apply poultices made from crushed leaves and roots. They gave massages using oils infused with medicinal plants to soothe aching muscles and joints. Some healing practices may sound familiar even today: aromatherapy, herbal compresses and therapeutic touch, all tailored to these massive sensitive animals. It's striking how advanced this veterinary care was, considering it took place centuries before modern science. You might smile imagining the peculiar preferences some elephants had. Oral histories tell of giants who insisted on sleeping in specific corners of the stable, almost as if claiming their own little kingdom within the bigger space. Others wouldn't settle without the presence of their favourite mahout nearby. The bond between mahout and elephant was incredibly close. These caretakers were not just trainers but confidants, healers and friends. Sometimes an elephant would refuse to lie down or sleep until soothed by the familiar tone of its mahout's voice, or the gentle caress of a trunk. Historians still argue about how much the design of these stables evolved over time. Did they start as basic shelters and grow increasingly sophisticated as knowledge about elephant behaviour and needs deepened? Or were practical concerns, weather, safety, and the sheer size of the animals the main drivers behind architectural changes? Some scholars suggest the stables mirror the shifting roles of elephants themselves, from wild jungle creatures captured for war and ceremony, to treasured symbols of royal power, to labourers and performers who required increasingly refined care. Either way, these structures stand as monuments to an extraordinary human-animal relationship. As you observe, an older elephant slowly lowers its immense body onto a bed of straw, folding its legs beneath it with surprising grace and ease. Nearby, younger elephants nudge each other playfully, their trunks entwined in gentle greetings and teasing gestures. The soft sounds of low rumbles and gentle sighs fill the stable, creating an atmosphere of peace and safety. This scene is a quiet counterpoint to the grandeur and drama usually associated with royal elephants, a reminder that beneath their regal exterior lie creatures with deep social needs and complex emotions. There's a beloved local story about a particularly stubborn elephant who refused to sleep anywhere but under a certain large mango tree just outside the stable. According to legend, this elephant was so attached to the cool shade and familiar scent of that tree's leaves that no amount of coaxing could persuade it to rest elsewhere. Such anecdotes humanize these giants and reveal the small rituals and comforts they cherished. They remind us that even creatures weighing several tons find solace in the familiar and the routine. As twilight falls and shadows lengthen across the Elephant Hotel grounds, you take one last look back at the stable. The silhouettes of elephants resting quietly, the gentle rustling of palm leaves in the evening breeze, and the soft murmur of mahouts' voices create a serene tapestry of life that has persisted for centuries. Here, elephants are not mere beasts of burden or royal trophies. They are cherished companions cared for with knowledge, devotion, and respect. Leaving the stable behind, you carry with you a new understanding of the delicate balance between human ingenuity and the needs of these majestic animals. The Elephant Hotel is not simply a place of work or spectacle, but a living community where care and companionship forged a bond as enduring as the island itself. You find yourself walking slowly along the shaded paths of the Elephant Hotel, away from the stable's quiet murmurs and the gentle rumbles of resting giants, toward the area where the mahouts live and work. The mahouts are the heart and soul of this entire operation, those tireless, often unsung caretakers who spend their entire lives devoted to the elephants. Imagine them dressed in simple, comfortable clothes woven from cotton, their skin weathered and sun-kissed from years spent outdoors, their hands roughened but gentle. They move with an effortless grace and confidence that comes only from deep, intimate knowledge of these enormous creatures. The air here is tinged with the smell of leather, fresh-cut grass, and the faint, earthy scent of sandalwood incense that some mahouts carry to keep insects at bay and calm their elephants' nerves. Mahouts are far more than mere attendants. They are trainers, healers, guides, and companions, often linked to their elephants by bonds that stretch back through generations. Many mahout families trace their lineage back centuries, passing down their skills and wisdom like precious heirlooms. This relationship is built on trust, patience, and a profound understanding of elephant psychology and behavior, knowledge accumulated through daily interaction rather than formal schooling. It's no exaggeration to say that a mahout's life is entwined with that of his or her elephant, shaping every moment from dawn to dusk. The responsibilities of a mahout are vast and varied. You can picture them waking before the sun, preparing carefully measured portions of food, bananas, sugarcane, jackfruit, and tender bamboo shoots, favourites of their charges. Feeding an elephant is a ceremony in itself, the slow, deliberate offering of food to enormous, flexible trunks that can be both gentle and precise. The mahouts often whisper softly to the animals as they feed, their voices low and soothing, words blending with the rustling leaves and distant bird calls. The tone is never harsh or commanding. Instead, it's a calming conversation between old friends. A historical fact well known among scholars is that the mahout-elephant bond was central to the safety and success of both parties. Without the mahout's guidance, even the most docile elephant could become dangerous due to their sheer size and strength. These handlers acted as both trainers and trusted confidants, using subtle cues, touches, tones, and gestures to communicate complex instructions. The trust was mutual. Elephants who respected their mahouts were more cooperative and responsive, especially during the demanding ceremonies or laborious tasks they were often called upon to perform. One charming and quirky tradition involved the use of special rhythmic songs and chants during routine activities. These were not just simple tunes, but carefully crafted vocal patterns that served as calming agents or behavioural cues. You might imagine a mahout softly singing a slow, repetitive chant while bathing an elephant, the sound acting as an oral anchor, grounding the animal's attention and easing its movements. Some of these ancient chants are still preserved in isolated villages today, a living connection to a long-lost world. Scholars continue to debate the degree of formalization in mahout training across ancient Sri Lanka. Some historians argue for a structured apprenticeship system, complete with rites of passage and strict protocols, designed to instill discipline and knowledge over years. Others suggest that much of the learning was informal, young mahouts simply observing elders and gradually gaining experience through trial and error, much like passing down folk wisdom. Either way, it's clear the skill required was immense and the responsibility heavy. A single mistake could result in serious injury or death for either elephant or handler. You watch a mahout coaxing a young elephant through its morning routine. The scene is a delicate ballet of communication. The mahout's low murmur is punctuated by soft claps or the occasional gentle prod from a wooden stick, perfectly timed to encourage movement without causing distress. The young elephant's trunk curls and uncurls, eyes wide with trust and curiosity. It's clear this is a relationship built on patience and respect rather than force. Nearby, a local legend tells of a mahout who once saved his elephant from a sudden flash flood. When the waters rose quickly and panic set in, the mahout plunged into the swirling river, staying close to the struggling beast and calming it with a familiar chant. This story, often retold with reverence and awe, highlights the courage and devotion that define the mahout's life. It's a vivid reminder that the connection between mahout and elephant was sometimes a matter of survival, not just daily care. The mahouts also performed important roles during ceremonial occasions, guiding their elephants with precision through intricate processions and rituals. In those moments, the calm and confidence of the mahout was as important as the grandeur of the elephants themselves. It's fascinating to consider that despite the elephant's massive size and strength, the slightest hesitation or misunderstanding between handler and animal could disrupt the entire event. This underlines the depth of their unspoken communication. As dusk approaches, the mahouts prepare their elephants for the night, guiding them gently back to the stables or open fields where they will rest. You can almost feel the tired but contented sighs of the animals settling down, trusting their mahouts to keep watch through the night. The mahouts themselves move slowly, fatigue softened by the quiet satisfaction of a day spent caring for these magnificent creatures. Leaving the mahout's quarters behind, you carry with you a renewed appreciation for their quiet dedication and expertise. The royal grandeur of the Elephant Hotel might attract attention, but it's the mahout's patience, knowledge and love that sustain this extraordinary partnership across centuries. In many ways, they are the living bridge between human and beast, preserving a timeless bond that continues to inspire awe and respect. You step away from the orderly, polished corridors of the Elephant Hotel and venture toward the dense, shadowy edges of the royal grounds, where the manicured gardens and stone paths dissolve into the thick, wild jungle of ancient Sri Lanka. The air changes immediately. Heavier, warmer, buzzing with life. The scent of damp earth mingles with the sweet, musky aroma of blooming flowers and the sharp tang of decaying leaves. You hear the endless hum of cicadas, the distant call of exotic birds, and the soft rustle of leaves stirred by unseen creatures. Here, at the very threshold of human control, the natural world still holds sway. This was once the true home of the elephants, roaming vast forests far beyond the palace walls. Imagine the elephants in their original wild state, massive herds moving with the grace and power of living mountains. They press their enormous feet into the soft, spongy earth, breaking branches and crushing ferns beneath their weight. Their thick trunks explore the forest canopy, pulling down ripe fruit and tender shoots. These were creatures ruled by natural rhythms, the cycle of seasons, the availability of water, and the shifting patterns of the forest itself. Before they were symbols of royal grandeur or tools of war, these elephants were wild animals, deeply entwined with the island's ecosystems. The transition from this untamed wilderness to the carefully maintained stables and elephant hotels was anything but simple. Capturing a wild elephant was a task that demanded patience, courage, and remarkable skill. The process involved large teams of hunters, mahouts, and assistants coordinating carefully to herd elephants into enclosures or traps. This was no small feat. Elephants are incredibly intelligent and cautious animals, able to sense danger and react swiftly. Direct capture was risky for both human and animal, often leading to injury or death. One clever method involved using trained elephants as decoys or leaders. These domesticated giants, familiar with human commands, would help guide wild elephants into traps or pens. This practice relied on the natural social instincts of elephants. They tend to follow a leader and are deeply bonded within their herds. The decoy elephants would approach wild herds, emitting calming sounds and gestures that encouraged the others to follow. This strategy reduced the stress and danger of capture, transforming what might have been a chaotic chase into a more controlled, almost cooperative process. It may surprise you that the capture and taming process often took months, sometimes even years. It wasn't a sudden conquest, but a gradual building of trust. The mahouts played a central role here, spending countless hours observing the elephant's behavior, learning its moods, fears, and preferences. Instead of using harsh force, they relied on patience and subtle communication, soft words, gentle touches, and steady routines to convince the wild elephant that it was safe. This early practice of behavioral psychology was remarkable, a sophisticated understanding of animal minds long before modern science. Elephants were not just valuable beasts of burden, they were royal treasures. Kings commissioned expensive expeditions deep into the jungle, specifically to find and capture exceptional elephants. These ventures were lavish affairs involving hundreds of people and extensive resources. They were as much political and symbolic demonstrations of power as practical efforts to enhance the king's stable. The presence of impressive elephants in royal parades and battles signalled wealth, strength, and divine favour. Historians still debate the extent to which these capture expeditions were driven by practical needs versus ceremonial display. Some argue that acquiring more elephants was essential for military logistics and heavy labour. Others suggest the hunts were elaborate status symbols, ways for rulers to demonstrate their dominion over the natural world. Either way, the effort invested in securing and taming elephants underscores how central they were to the island's power structures. As you explore deeper into the forest edge, you notice the telltale signs of elephant activity. Patches of flattened underbrush, snapped branches where trunks have pulled down foliage, and large, unmistakable footprints pressed into the soft soil. These signs connect the captive elephants back to their wild ancestors, reminding you that even in domestication, the call of the jungle remains deeply rooted in their instincts. This delicate interplay between wild and captive elephants shaped not only royal power, but also Sri Lankan culture and spirituality. Elephants were revered as sacred creatures, guardians of the forest, symbols of wisdom, patience, and strength. Their majestic presence featured prominently in religious ceremonies, art, and folklore. Some traditions held that elephants carried the spirits of ancient kings or deities, and treating them with respect was seen as a sacred duty. Despite centuries of domestication, elephants never fully lost their wild nature. Their complex social structures, memories, and emotional intelligence endured. Modern researchers continue to study how captivity affects elephants, but it's clear their deep-rooted instincts and behaviours remain largely intact. This enduring wildness adds a layer of mystery to the majestic beasts housed in the elephant hotels. As twilight descends, the jungle sounds soften and blend into a calm night chorus. You turn back toward the warm lights of the Elephant Hotel, carrying with you the scent of damp earth and the echo of wild calls. The elephants of Sri Lanka exist in the space between two worlds, wild and tamed, natural and royal, living monuments to the island's rich history, its culture, and its enduring bond with these magnificent creatures. You stroll away from the dense, mysterious jungle edges back toward the heart of the royal grounds, where the Elephant Hotel stands as a bustling hub of majestic activity. This is not just a place for housing animals, it is a unique world where ancient traditions, royal ceremony, and the sheer power of nature intertwine seamlessly. The elephants here are no mere beasts of burden. They are celebrated members of the court, pampered and honoured in ways few other animals ever experience. Picture the scene: giant elephants draped in vivid silks embroidered with gold thread, their massive bodies adorned with intricate jewellery and bright ceremonial paints that glisten under the tropical sun. Their eyes gleam with intelligence and a quiet dignity that commands respect. Around them, mahouts and attendants move like a well-practiced orchestra, attending to every need with a practiced grace born of centuries-old customs. The daily routines in this elephant hotel are astonishingly elaborate. Mornings begin with a ritualistic bathing, where cool river water or specially dug pools become the stage for a thorough washdown. You can almost hear the splash of water hitting the thick hides and see the spray catching sunlight like tiny diamonds. The mahouts wield long brushes and brooms, scrubbing every inch of the elephant's leathery skin, which feels rough but is surprisingly sensitive to touch. This bathing ritual is not just about cleanliness. It's a moment of bonding, a time when elephant and human communicate through gentle strokes and reassuring murmurs. Feeding these colossal creatures is another spectacle. An adult elephant can consume between 150 to 300 kilograms of food per day, a staggering amount that demands constant preparation. The kitchens behind the scenes churn out heaps of bananas, sugarcane stalks, fresh green leaves, and specially prepared rice mixtures. These diets often include medicinal herbs believed to boost the elephant's health and vitality, revealing an impressive depth of traditional veterinary knowledge. The scents of fresh grass and sweet fruit mingle with the earthy aroma of the jungle creeping near the palace walls. What's remarkable, and perhaps unexpected, is the extraordinary relationship between elephant and mahout. It transcends mere ownership or control. It's a lifelong partnership built on trust, respect, and intuition. Usually a mahout begins training a young elephant from an early age, sometimes even from infancy, staying with the same elephant for decades. This intimate bond means the mahout understands his elephant's moods, habits, and fears like a close friend would. The elephant, in turn, responds to the subtle cues and commands of the mahout, creating a mutual rhythm that guides their daily lives. The training process itself is a blend of art and discipline. Elephants learn to respond to a variety of commands signalled by voice, hand gestures, or the gentle touch of a tool called the ankus, a hooked instrument used to guide but not harm. These commands enable mahouts to direct elephants through complex tasks, carrying heavy loads, participating in ceremonial parades, or performing specific behaviours during festivals. The level of cooperation required is immense, given that elephants are highly intelligent and independent-minded animals. This speaks to the mahout's skill, patience, and empathy. Historians and scholars continue to debate exactly how training was administered. Some evidence suggests that positive reinforcement, food rewards, and gentle encouragement was the primary method, cultivating cooperation rather than fear. Others indicate that harsher methods were occasionally used, especially with particularly stubborn or aggressive elephants. Despite these disagreements, there is broad consensus that the relationship was far more nuanced than mere domination and control, involving a sophisticated understanding of elephant psychology. When festival time arrives, the elephants truly come into their own. Imagine the grand parades that wind through city streets and palace grounds, where these giants of the forest become living symbols of power and grace. Their bodies, covered in richly embroidered cloth and shining ornaments, move in slow, deliberate steps to the beat of drums, flutes, and chanting voices. The air is thick with incense smoke and the excited murmur of crowds gathered to witness these majestic creatures. The elephant's presence in these processions is deeply symbolic. They embody royal strength, wisdom, and the divine sanction of the monarch's rule. Listening closely, you can hear the low, trumpeting calls and deep rumbles the elephants use to communicate, sounds that resonate not only through the air, but through the very earth beneath your feet. These vocalizations are part of a complex social language that expresses a wide range of emotions, from joy and curiosity to warning and mourning. Elephants' ability to feel and express empathy is legendary, documented even in modern studies, and it adds a profound layer of connection to their role in human society. At the close of the day, as the sun dips below the horizon, you find yourself near the resting elephants, lying peacefully beneath the canopy of stars. Their heavy breathing and slow, rhythmic movements create a soothing lullaby, a reminder that these incredible creatures are more than just royal possessions or ceremonial props. They are living bridges between the wild world and human civilization, embodying centuries of cultural reverence, practical partnership, and deep emotional intelligence. Watching them settle in for the night, you understand that the story of Sri Lanka's elephants is a story of coexistence. It is a narrative of respect for nature's power, a delicate balance between taming and honouring, and a testament to the extraordinary bond between humans and one of the planet's most magnificent animals. In this dance between jungle and palace, wildness and order, strength and tenderness, the elephants of Sri Lanka continue to inspire awe and wonder. You step quietly away from the lively Elephant Hotel, where the last rays of sunset have faded into the gentle dusk, and the air is alive with the subtle sounds of the jungle awakening under the cover of night. The elephants, those massive symbols of strength and wisdom, settle into their rest, their deep breaths blending into the soft rustle of leaves and distant calls of nocturnal birds. But their story, your journey through the fascinating roles they played in ancient Sri Lanka, is far from over. Tonight, you dive deeper into the many layers of significance elephants held, from being vital cogs in the economy, fierce agents of war, to sacred icons woven into the spiritual tapestry of the island. Imagine yourself standing on a dusty path winding through the lush, tropical forests of ancient Sri Lanka. Around you, traders and labourers hustle about, and amidst them lumbers a colossal figure, an elephant burdened with a massive load of precious teak timber or fragrant sandalwood. These woods are highly prized commodities used in construction, shipbuilding and crafting religious artefacts. You can almost hear the slow but steady thuds of the elephant's feet pressing into the earth, carrying heavy cargo that no human or beast could easily bear. Elephants were the ultimate heavy lifters in this landscape, navigating muddy trails and steep hills with a strength and sure-footedness unmatched by any other beast. The importance of elephants in the economic sphere of ancient Sri Lanka cannot be overstated. They were essentially the kingdom's all-terrain trucks, able to haul goods from deep forests to coastal ports where merchants awaited to ship them across the Indian Ocean. This logistical ability supported not only local economies, but helped build connections across South and Southeast Asia. It's fascinating to consider that the success of trade routes depended as much on these giant creatures as on human ingenuity and maritime skill. Now let's turn to a very different but equally impressive role elephants played: warfare. Picture a battlefield where the earth shakes under the approach of a towering elephant, armoured with thick leather and metal plates, and sometimes bearing a wooden tower on its back filled with archers or spearmen. The sight alone is enough to send enemy troops into disarray. Elephants were ancient war machines, formidable not just for their size and strength, but also for their ability to break through enemy lines and sow chaos. However, historians still debate how effective elephants truly were in battle. Some argue that their greatest weapon was psychological. The sheer terror they inspired could cause opposing armies to flee before the fight even began. Others suggest that their strategic value lay more in logistics, moving troops and supplies through difficult jungle terrain where horses and carts struggled. Either way, the use of war elephants became a status symbol for kings, a way to project power and command respect on the battlefield and beyond. Beyond the economic and military roles, elephants were deeply embedded in Sri Lanka's spiritual and religious life. Buddhism, the dominant faith on the island, has long held the elephant in high regard. These creatures symbolize qualities such as wisdom, patience and steadfastness, virtues celebrated in Buddhist teachings. You can picture temples and shrines adorned with elephant carvings, statues of white elephants representing purity and sacredness, and religious festivals where elephants are decked in elaborate garments and led processions in honor of the Buddha. There's a mystical aura surrounding elephants in these spiritual traditions. Some fringe theories suggest ancient Sri Lankans believed elephants could act as intermediaries between the human and spiritual worlds, channeling divine energies or carrying sacred relics. While mainstream historians approach these ideas cautiously, the cultural importance of elephants in religious ceremonies is undeniable. The annual Isala Perahera festival in Kandy, for example, is a breathtaking display where beautifully decorated elephants parade through the streets carrying the sacred tooth relic of the Buddha. This event is not only a tourist attraction, but a profound cultural expression of reverence and continuity. Yet, this sacred status created a complex paradox. Elephants were simultaneously divine symbols and practical beasts of burden. This duality sometimes led to conflicting priorities, the desire to honor and protect these animals versus the demands of labor, warfare, and royal display. The historical record shows efforts to legislate and regulate elephant treatment, early animal welfare laws that prohibited overworking or mistreatment. This is remarkable for its time and reveals an early recognition of animal rights, deeply tied to cultural and religious values. You start to appreciate how these majestic animals were more than tools or symbols. They were active participants in Sri Lanka's civilization. Their strength supported economic growth, their presence shifted the tides of battle, and their spiritual significance shaped cultural identity. The interaction between human ambition and elephant majesty created a dynamic relationship that evolved over centuries, reflecting both practical needs and profound respect. As darkness settles fully, the jungle's nocturnal chorus envelops you in a gentle embrace. The footprints of elephants mark the earth. Their echoes reverberate in the collective memory of the island, and their spirit lingers in the stories and rituals passed down through generations. This enduring legacy speaks to a civilization that lived in balance with nature's grandeur, recognizing the power and dignity of these incredible creatures. Tonight, as you listen to the subtle sounds of the wild, you feel a quiet reverence for the elephants who helped shape Sri Lanka's history. Beasts of burden, warriors, sacred beings, and living bridges between the human and natural worlds. As twilight deepens over the lush landscapes of ancient Sri Lanka, you find yourself wandering down a narrow path that leads into the heart of a village where humans and elephants have shared the land for centuries. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and cooking fires, mingling with the distant murmur of a nearby stream. Around you, villagers move quietly through their evening routines, children chasing each other near the paddy fields, women weaving baskets, men tending to tools and livestock. Somewhere in the background, the soft but unmistakable rumble of elephant footsteps echoes, a reminder that these majestic creatures are woven into the very fabric of everyday life here, far beyond royal courts and battlefields. Elephants in ancient Sri Lanka were not just symbols of power or tools of war. They were living, breathing neighbours who shaped the landscape alongside humans. Their role in agriculture was pivotal. Imagine an elephant lumbering through the dense forest, clearing underbrush and felling trees with powerful trunks and tusks, transforming wild terrain into arable land. This natural forest management created open spaces that villagers could cultivate, enabling rice paddies and spice gardens to thrive. The elephant's foraging habits helped recycle nutrients back into the soil, promoting fertility and supporting the island's agricultural prosperity. Yet, this relationship was far from simple or always peaceful. Elephants are massive animals, and their passage through fields could devastate crops overnight. Villagers had to constantly negotiate the delicate balance between welcoming the benefits elephants brought and protecting their own livelihoods. It's easy to imagine tense village meetings where elders debated how best to deter elephants, from raiding food stores without harming the creatures revered by tradition and religion. To mitigate such conflicts, ancient Sri Lankans built specialized structures known as elephant corrals, or paddocks. These were not just simple fences but sophisticated enclosures crafted from timber and stone, designed to hold elephants safely for short periods. Their construction reflected a deep understanding of elephant behavior and physical strength. These corrals served multiple purposes, as holding areas during religious festivals, quarantine zones for sick animals, and even as protective spaces to prevent wild herds from entering villages during vulnerable times. The architecture was so effective that some scholars believe these techniques influenced animal enclosures across South and Southeast Asia. Despite these innovations, elephants and humans inevitably faced moments of direct conflict. Records indicate that ancient laws sought to protect elephants from cruelty and overwork, imposing fines or punishments on those who mistreated them. Yet, these laws also recognize the necessity of managing elephant movements to safeguard crops and communities. This legal balancing act demonstrates the sophisticated and pragmatic approach Sri Lankan society took toward human-elephant coexistence, a far cry from simplistic notions of either unmitigated reverence or exploitation. Integral to this coexistence were the mutes, the skilled elephant handlers whose knowledge and empathy were passed down through generations. Unlike the often romanticized image of the solitary mute, many lived within village communities, deeply embedded in local social networks. Their work demanded patience, intuition, and a kind of quiet diplomacy to manage the temperaments of these enormous animals. Folk tales abound of mahouts who calmed stampeding elephants with a whisper, or shared meals with their charges, emphasizing a relationship built on mutual trust rather than domination. A fascinating local belief held that elephants could sense impending weather changes or natural disasters. Villagers keenly observed elephant behavior, noting restlessness or unusual movements as warnings of approaching storms or floods. This ancient form of natural weather forecasting blended keen observation with spiritual intuition, illustrating how deeply humans read and respected the signals sent by their animal neighbours. Farmers would prepare accordingly, protecting their crops and homes based on the silent advice of elephants, a charming reminder that survival often depended on paying attention to nature's subtle cues. The historical record offers contrasting perspectives on whether this human-elephant relationship ultimately aided conservation or contributed to population pressures. Some historians argue that ancient practices of respect and regulated use helped maintain healthy elephant populations over centuries. Others point out that expanding agriculture and urban development inevitably pushed elephants from traditional habitats, leading to cycles of displacement and tension. The truth, as is often the case, lies in a complex interplay of cultural, environmental and economic factors shaping a dynamic and evolving coexistence. As you listen to the night sounds, the croak of frogs, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of nocturnal birds, you sense that the story of elephants in Sri Lanka is not just one of kings and temples, but of everyday human experience. It is a tale of adaptation, respect, conflict, and harmony between two intelligent species sharing a fragile landscape. The legacy of this relationship continues in the present day, inspiring conservation efforts and cultural celebrations that honour the enduring bond between Sri Lankans and their elephants. Tonight, as the stars begin to glitter overhead and the jungle settles into its nocturnal rhythm, you feel a quiet reverence for the deep and ancient connection humans share with these magnificent creatures. Their footsteps may have faded into history, but their spirit lingers in village stories, in sacred rituals, and in the ongoing dance of coexistence that defines life on this island. It is a story not just of survival, but of partnership and respect, reminding you that history lives not only in grand monuments, but in the shared lives of all beings. The night grows deeper as you settle into the final chapter of this long, winding journey through ancient Sri Lanka's intertwined history of humans and elephants. You're no longer just a distant observer. You feel as if you've walked alongside the towering pachyderms themselves, felt the rumble of their footsteps beneath your feet, and heard the soft murmur of village life echoing through the humid jungle air. The experience lingers, wrapping around you like a warm, familiar blanket. Here in this quiet, you can almost smell the earthiness of the forest floor, sense the subtle shifts in the evening breeze, and taste the faint aroma of wood fires from distant homes. This story, at first glance, might have seemed like a curious tale of exotic creatures and forgotten temples, but it has revealed itself as something far more profound, a story of coexistence. Not just peaceful coexistence, but a delicate, dynamic relationship between two vastly different beings, humans and elephants, each shaping the other's world in ways both monumental and subtle. You've watched how elephants served as royal symbols of power and prestige, their enormous forms carved into temple walls and paraded through city streets during festivals. Yet beyond their status as majestic beasts or royal mounts, they were vital participants in everyday life. Elephants helped clear dense jungle, their heavy footsteps and powerful trunks breaking through undergrowth and opening the way for rice paddies and spice gardens. They were nature's bulldozers long before modern machinery, a living force of its ecological transformation. Their movements recycled nutrients, their droppings enriching the soil in ways that supported both wild flora and cultivated crops. Without elephants, the landscape of ancient Sri Lanka would have looked very different. Wilder, denser, perhaps less hospitable to human settlement. Yet this partnership was complex. You can imagine the tension when herds wandered into fields ripe with harvest. One night's march could trample weeks of hard work, sending villagers scrambling to protect their livelihoods. These were not just animals in the distance. They were neighbours, sometimes welcome, sometimes feared. The people had to invent strategies to live alongside giants whose very presence could shift the balance between plenty and famine. This is where the ingenuity of ancient Sri Lankans shines. The construction of specialised elephant corrals, strong enclosures crafted from timber and stone, reveals a sophisticated understanding of elephant behaviour and strength. These were not simple fences. They were carefully engineered spaces designed to hold elephants safely without causing them harm or distress. The corral served many roles: temporary shelters during religious festivals, safe zones for elephants under quarantine, and protective barriers to keep wild herds from overrunning villages at vulnerable times. The skill involved suggests that the ancient builders combined architectural knowledge with deep insights into elephant psychology. Even more fascinating is the legal and social framework surrounding elephants. Ancient laws balanced reverence with pragmatism. They prohibited cruelty and excessive labour, imposing fines on offenders, yet they also recognised the need to manage elephants to protect human interests. This balancing act reveals a society striving to live in harmony with nature, not through domination, but through negotiation and respect. It's a remarkable example of early animal welfare and environmental stewardship. The mahouts, elephant handlers, played a crucial role in this delicate balance. These men and women were not simply trainers but caretakers, often living in close-knit communities where their skills and knowledge passed from generation to generation. Their relationship with elephants was built on trust, patience, and communication. Folktales tell of mahouts calming, stampeding elephants with a whisper, of quiet moments when handler and beast shared meals and rest. The mahouts embodied a unique human-animal bond, a living bridge between two worlds. You can't help but be charmed by the idea that villagers watched elephant behaviour closely to predict weather. When the elephants became restless, they sensed storms or floods coming, providing an early warning system born from centuries of observation and deep connection to the natural world. This ancient form of ecological wisdom blends scientific insight with spiritual reverence, a reminder that before modern meteorology, survival depended on careful attention to nature's subtle cues. Of course, this relationship was not without its problems. Historians debate the long-term impacts of expanding agriculture and urban development on elephant habitats. While reverence and careful management may have helped preserve populations for centuries, the push for land and resources inevitably led to conflicts and displacement. These tensions reflect an ongoing struggle, still faced by many societies worldwide: how to balance human needs with the rights and survival of other species. In this way, the story of Sri Lanka's elephants is not just history, it's a living narrative. It continues in conservation efforts, cultural rituals, and the hearts of people who recognize elephants as more than animals. They are symbols of heritage, resilience, and the possibility of coexistence. Now, as you listen to the night sounds, the chirp of crickets, the distant call of a nightjar, the rustle of leaves, you sense that the story has settled deep within you. History is not just a series of facts or grand monuments. It is alive in the rhythms of the natural world and the quiet, ongoing relationships between humans and animals. You imagine the silhouette of an elephant moving through the moonlit jungle, massive and serene, its slow footsteps a testament to endurance and wisdom. That image lingers, a powerful symbol of a world where humans and elephants walk together, shaping the land and each other's lives. As your breathing slows and your eyelids grow heavy, you feel a profound calm. The ancient heartbeat of Sri Lanka's forests and villages seems to pulse gently through your veins. The elephants, with their steady presence, remind you that power need not be loud or violent. It can be quiet, patient, and respectful. Tonight, as sleep draws you deeper into its embrace, carry this story with you. Let it settle softly into your dreams, a reminder of the enduring bond between humans and nature, the gentle strength of coexistence, and the hope that such harmony can continue.